foster babies and high quality foster families, and you know, the women just flock to it. All right, there are challenges. Can we find a few guys that want to be on this board? Because balance is a goal. They bring different perspectives. Okay. So, ethnicity. Minorities are significantly underrepresented on our boards. They account for 14% of all board members and 27% of the population. So I don't have a magic elixir for how to recruit minorities to a board, but I do know that what I strongly encourage boards to do is clearly each year set it as a goal. And it's particularly critical in terms of if the clientele that you're serving is a minority clientele. It's particularly challenging. Okay. Does anybody have any sort of suggestions on that? Any quick suggestions? Yes.
You have to go to the communities and recruit them from the communities, establish relationships with those minority groups that you're serving. Let them know that you truly want them involved.
Good. Can you hear him? He said you need to go to those community groups and let them know that you truly want them involved. Good. Good. Thank you, and laugh. Yeah. Another area of diversity is professional expertise. I'm always amazed at how, while we think we're going to have that, there's this thing that happens on some boards. I call it the one lawyer syndrome that multiplies. And that's not just for lawyers. But I was working with a board, and they were about 10 people, and they had 2 lawyers on their board. And I'll tell you, it's easier to recruit lawyers probably than any other board members, and I'm not putting them down. So they get together, and who do they know? It's their friends and acquaintances. So they started with 2 lawyers, and suddenly they had 5 lawyers, and then suddenly 5 lawyers. They had, you know what I'm saying? So what you want to go with is a balance of different expertises, even though it's more convenient to be able to say, you know, gee, I know all these people in this area. I worked with another board that was all community activists. That was hilarious. They could never make a decision. You know, that's, yeah, absolutely. And then they were always organizing themselves and each other. Okay. We've already talked about specific skill sets. Clearly, you're going after the best financial person you can find, and everybody is. So, you know, continue to do that. And by the way, when we get into recruitment, I'd be saying this too, but every single person, ED and board member sitting in this room, your goal is to constantly be alert for good board members. And when we talk about recruitment, I'll say you have a list in your head. Everybody you meet in every aspect of your life, you think about them as a potential board member. Okay, and that you hope you can get your board trained so they do the same thing. Okay. Personal style. Interesting. We hardly ever think about personal style as a criteria. But have you ever had all chiefs and no Indians and had to work with them? Okay. So look at a balance. Do we have a whole bunch of talkers? Maybe we can get a few talker listeners on our board. You know, begin to look at what's that balance in terms of dynamics. Okay. All right. So I've already talked about be aware of too many people of the same type. Board terms. How many people in the room do not have board terms? Okay, I'm going to talk to you about why I think they're important. How many of you have board terms but you don't enforce them? Right, most of us. Yeah, okay, not most of us, but many people too. Okay. One of the things that happens if you don't have, if people serve on the board year after year, frankly, you really don't get a lot of new blood or a lot of new ideas. Okay, and it gets stale, that's right, things get old. And by the way, what you get is people burn out and they don't leave. You know, I'm sure you've had some of those too. Pardon me?
Abuse of power.
An abuse of power can happen, that's right. Because typically if you don't have board terms, you probably don't have committee and chair rotating either. So it's hard to bring new people in without board terms. It really frees it up. And don't make, a typical board term now is about 3 years, with a renewable 3 years for a lot of organizations. And what we've discovered is it takes the first year to kind of get to know the job. It takes the second year to kind of feel comfortable. And by the third year, you've got a board member that's zinging. You know, they're demonstrating competency. They might be taking on a committee chair or they've participated on committees. And don't make the second turn automatic. You know, have a process where there's a conversation with the person. You know, do you want to re-up for the next 3 years? You know, it really helps. The other thing on board terms is someone says, yes, but what if I have just a great person? And that's why we tend to ignore board terms. You get to the end of, let's say, 4 years. Let's say that's a board term. And you said, this is one of my best board members. I don't want to lose them. What do? You have a policy that says if a person has a specific expertise, they can stay another year, you know. But what I do recommend you is that you put a limit on that and that you say they can stay another year, but they can't stay another one. And you'll know if you've done that, then you're really going to try as hard as you can to find that expertise outside. Or you have a policy that says you just have to be off the board 1 year, and then you can come back. Okay? And so you take that person and put them on an advisory committee, okay? And then bring them back on in a year. But you do have your board terms in place, and you are enforcing them. Because the worst thing you can have are terms that you don't enforce. Because what people begin to know is that they're being selectively enforced. Oh, well, so-and-so's still been on. You know, they're different. So you want an even playing field. Okay? Any questions on board terms? All righty. Okay. Yes?
One question. Any tips for excising?
Oh, yeah. Well, Alan's sitting up here. Alan kicks them to the advisory board, right? Excising, number one, is you create an advisory board and put them on it. And then, you know, the advisory board meets maybe once a year for cocktails. All right? So that's one. Board terms are a way to excise them, but if you don't have board terms, you know. The only other third tip I have is I think you begin to talk to them about the responsibilities that they may have, and are they really happy? You know, if this is someone that's really active and really involved, then you have a bigger challenge.
Yeah, it's sort of the abuse of power thing. So.
Yeah. I'll get to it too. I think committee, we're going to talk about terms for everybody. So. Okay, third one, board size. That was the third effectiveness criteria. The board size is appropriate. So what's the right board size? That's right. That's right. It all depends. It all depends. No one size fits all. Depends upon the stage of development that their board's in. Working boards are usually small, up to 10 or 12 people. Policy boards can clearly be larger. You need enough members to man your committees. You need enough members to do the work that the board needs to do. And in practice, the average board size is 16. And sizes range, frankly, from 11 to 21. There are clearly smaller boards, but I'm comfortable. What I've discovered in terms of a board, that how many people show up for a meeting. If you have less than 11, I think you're in trouble, because if people are showing up for a meeting, you may end up with 7. So if you can grow your board to that size, at least that minimum size, I think there are many more advantages to that than keeping it significantly small. Sometimes people say, well, you know, I really want a small board because it's more manageable, it's more controllable. Yeah, but you don't have the support that you need. I'm saying, you know, make it larger. You'll find it will pay off in terms of the expertise you're getting. Clearly, when we look at institutional boards, they're what, 40, 50, 60. Interesting, though, too, is that large boards, though, they tend to feel less ownership. Pro Golf Kids? I think when they started, anybody familiar with Pro Golf Kids here? Well, help me on this. I don't have exact. When they started, I think when Ernie started them, they had something like 70 on their board at one point in time. Yeah, I think they went to saying we want a fundraising board. My guess is they started with a fundraising board in a small organization. I just counted it last night, and they're down to 21. Okay, so there was a learning there about how big